No mai haere mai, welcome to Arapohue School. We are avid readers here. We have got some children who just participated earlier in the year in the book battle and really enjoyed the selection of novels that they engaged in reading and answering questions about. So I'll just hand over to a couple of our senior students who would like to say something.
Kia ora and welcome to Arapohue School. We are thrilled to have you here.
At this school, we have a couple of your books, one of them being Rona and the Moon.
I would like to introduce you up to chat more about your culture career.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and look at the sun. And it's just shining so nice, so bright, all the colours outside, rich green. It's just beautiful. It's lovely. Last week, I went the other way. So I've come up from Auckland. So last night I was picked up and drove all the way up here, and I'm driving here, and so we drove all the way up from Auckland up to here. Last week I went the other way, I went south, and I went to a place called Taumarunui, and I was down there. One thing I noticed on my drive up here, no goats. Heading down to Taumarunui, there's all these wild goats everywhere. Like driving down the road and a goat would just jump out of the bush. Not behind fences, these are wild goats. So no one owns them, and these goats were just jumping around. I came around one corner and a goat jumped out and it had two little babies with it. Oh, very cute, yes, exactly, very, very cute. And I told my partner, my wife, about the goats, and my daughter, and they said, pick them up, grab them. Can you imagine me stopping my car, hopping out, and trying to catch wild goats?
Yes!
Here's me running around trying to get... What about the farmers down there? What would they have been thinking? They would have looked out their window. What's that guy doing? He must be from Auckland. That's what they would have said. He must be from Auckland. And if I did catch the goat and get it in the back of my truck, then I have to go to the motel. What's the motel going to say when I turn up with a goat? People don't do that. It's not like a dog or a cat, is it? You don't take it to a motel with you. And so, yeah, people are, oh, what's the motel person going to say? They're going to look at me and they're going to, you're definitely from Auckland, aren't you? Yeah. So, no, I did not catch the goat and the kids. And, the baby goat. I mean, I don't know where my wife and my daughter was thinking we were going to keep it. We live in the suburbs, in the city, a big suburb. No farm area, it's just a big suburb. Wouldn't be very fair for the goat to be there in that suburb. Don't think it would. Nobody else is going to go there. Hold on to questions. We'll do questions at the end. Don't worry, I will definitely bring you questions. Don't worry. So, as you can see, I'm always finding stories. There's always stories. And I did not do well at school. Let's be clear here. I did not do well at school at all. I found school really challenging. When I went to school every day, I ended up in special classes for everything. So I was behind all the other children. I had to go to special classes for reading and for maths. I even had to go to the staff room and see a lady who was called a speech therapist, and her job was to help me talk properly because I couldn't talk properly. So she would sit in front of me and she would go, Timothy, watch my mouth. And she'd go, this, there, then, that. And I had to copy her over and over again, making sure I put my tongue in the right position to pronounce TH words correctly. So I did not do well at school. And books, there was no reading in my home. We had like 3 or 5 books in the house. That's all. No other books. And those books were kept in a dark cupboard down a small dark hallway. And we weren't allowed to go in the cupboard because there was photos in there our mother didn't want us to see. So here's this cupboard and we weren't even allowed to go in there. And when I got the chance to go in there, I'd get these old books out. They were old and ripped and and I would just go through them and look at all the pictures and wonder what the words were saying because I couldn't read the words. My dad, when I say my dad, this is my adopted dad, my stepfather. My dad, he ended up working in a factory. He was a factory worker and he got a job working at a place called Forest Products in a part of Auckland called Penrose. And he started working in this huge, big factory. This thing was a monster. It was massive. Big sides that went all the way up. It was a huge, big thing. It was cold and grey, and it had these big chimneys up the top and that billowed smoke. And it was, I'm telling you, it was like a monster. I'd go to work with him sometimes, and we would drive through past these other factories and would come to these other buildings and would come to this big building. And this building, this monster, ate books. It ate them. I'm not lying, this is where books go to die. It was a pulping machine, a pulping factory. So all the books would go there and it would go into this huge big dish, and it had blades in it. And the blades would go spinning around and around, and it would make turn the books into like porridge. And the place smelled, it reeked of wet paper. My dad's job was to look after that machine. He had to push buttons. He was in this little room, and there was all these panels. And in the room, like when you went into the factory, it was really loud, really big. Like you had to wear earmuffs. It was so loud. And when you went into his little office, it was a bit more quieter. It was like a hum, not so big and loud. And he was in there and he'd be pushing buttons and stuff, and he'd look out the window in that little office and watch the pulping machine, huge big thing. And that was up the top. So down below was a big conveyor belt that went down to the ground floor. So this machine was stories high. It had all these platforms and ladders and stuff. And so my dad was up the top and he would be watching the conveyor belt. So on the ground floor there were these bulldozers, and they would pick up these hay bales, like they were hay bales, but book bales. They were bales of books and comics and magazines, and they would pick them up and they would drive over, put them on the conveyor belt, and the conveyor belt would keep going all the way up, and it would tip everything into that big pulping machine, those big blades. And my dad had to make sure that that conveyor belt ran properly, like I said, and sometimes paper and stuff would get stuck and start building up because the conveyor belt didn't stop, it just kept going. And so all the stuff would build up. My dad would grab a stick. He'd go out there, he would stand over that big machine, that big pulping, those big blades, and he'd hold onto a handrail, and he'd reach right out like this, and he'd be poking the conveyor belt to loosen all the stuff so that it would fall into the pulping machine. Now, this is where things changed in my life. This is where things got interesting. Because my dad started to bring home magazines and comics from work. They weren't really for us, they were for my mum's wealthy relatives. My mum thought, here's a good opportunity to show off to the relatives. So she thought, she said to my dad, bring home some of those things, we'll give them to them. But us kids got to read them. Comics, magazines, books, all sorts of things. And sometimes we even got to go to Dad's work and look through the stuff. As long as we stayed away from the bulldozers, we would get sent off to some corner of the factory, and we used to go through the bales and start looking at all these books. And that's where I became in love with books. It was incredible. I fell in love with books through the place that ate them. But because of that, I got all these comics in there. Now, I just looked at the pictures, to be honest, because the words were so difficult for me. I hardly ever even went to school as a kid because of a whole lot of stuff happening in my life and a whole lot of stuff happening in my home. My home was very unsettled. Hi, just a quick word to say that my books, including my latest for children, are available in store and online. You can find a full list of my books at timtepene.com. If you're enjoying my content, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you for your support. Now back to the video.